Hi, how's it going? So I know most of you are in the thick of sweeps, and it seems counterintuitive, right? Because a lot of folks are celebrating the holidays, expecting things to slow down, and this is probably your busiest time of year if you are a risk adjustment professional. And I will tell you, having been in healthcare since 2000, risk adjustment around 2007, I think. I don't know, the memory's going, but people will tell you that there's a slow period. Hate to tell you this, but I have yet to find it in all those years. But I know that it's a critical period for you. And even more important because I don't know about you, but it was like if you've ever seen that Seinfeld episode and Kramer repaints the lines and they have that wide road and feeling really comfortable. I really enjoyed having that extra submission period from the public health emergency. I just felt like we had a little bit of breathing room. If you didn't get it right in January sweeps, you had just one more chance, but you're not going to get it this time. That period is over. So everything for 2022 needs to be in by the end of January 2024. I know sometimes folks get confused on the dates, and if you're not sure, do check. I did an earlier episode on the submission and sweep schedules and how to best align your submissions with timing and meet those revenue expectations of your company. But I want to continue to give you tips because I know that you're in the throes of sweeps. And this time, or for this episode, I wanted to talk about encounter data submissions, particularly around the $0 or denied claims. A lot of times, folks think that or they're misaligned between their risk adjustment operations or their encounter operations with claims. And you want to make sure that you are submitting every bit of clinical data as possible. In fact, you can, while ASNs are no longer permitted, you can create an 837 file with retrospective chart review, and you would use a 99499 code. And CMS recognizes this, a CPT, and acknowledges. I know they don't want all codes coming from chart review, but they acknowledge that we're not where we need to be as it relates to data interoperability. And it gives you another opportunity to be able to submit data, that clinical data that is so important for the work that you've done all year long to care for those patients. I'm going to take you into the Encounter Data Processing Manual, one of my reading favorites. I would put it on your list too, just to check, and I'll show you where you can find the most recent model just to make sure that you're up to date on all that's required for submissions. Stay tuned. Okay, so this is where you would go to find the most recent version of the Encounter Data Processing and Submission Manual. Now, CMS, I hope you're listening because you do not make it easy to find things. If you do a Google search, you'll find, I often find in the search results, I'll get various dates. And you want to make sure always that you're working with the most current publication. But even if you just type in your search browser, Encounter Data Submission Processing Guide, this will come up in the search results. But again, you just want to double check and make sure that you have the right date. And you can see this is the latest publication. It's from December 21st, 2022. I haven't seen anything newer. By all means, if somebody knows something that I don't, include it in the comments below and we'll get it corrected. I also want to give a disclaimer too. I have never processed claims. I've worked in all sorts of different areas of government programs since 2000, everywhere from sales and marketing to education to the PMO, trying to think what else. Anything around regulations and compliance, but have not processed claims. And then, of course, risk adjustment quality when risk actually became a thing. All right. So anyway, so this last line here that you can see on the screen is the Encounter Data Processing Guide. So we'll go ahead and click it. And if you click through, I would also recommend for reading material, and I'll move my head if I need to. Oh, I can stay where I'm at. I would also recommend for reading material that you look at the claims manuals. Good reads would be, I think, chapter 3, 7, and 10, just to acquaint yourself. And it's not that you have to study it. I probably really should go back and reread them. But I think that it's good to have that awareness, especially because as a risk and quality professional, your information is coming from this data. And if it's not making its way through the CMS, you need to work with your teams in your organization who is ever doing that data submission and aggregating claims, working through any clearinghouse errors, that you're connected with them and that you're working together to make sure that all that data is going over. This could be a much longer session, and in time, I'll bring you bits and pieces, and I'm hoping to have some interviews with folks that are far more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am. But I wanted to point out, though, something that I thought was important for you to share with your teams during sweeps so that, again, you get credit for everything that you're doing. One of the things that I like to do if I'm trying to find information quickly is use the search function. I'm going to type in denied, and it should pull up for me the section on denied status. This is what I wanted to call your attention to, and it's highlighted here for you. CMS expects that MAOs and other entities will submit encounter data records for each service or item covered by the plan and provided to an enrollee. So those could be things that are capitated visits, or even if they're denied, they still have that service. And that's what you need to remember. So regardless of payment status of the claim, it could be accepted or denied for payment by the MAO, but you still submit that information because it provides information as to what that patient's health status is. And I'll just read a little further. Because an EDR is a record of a service or item covered by the plan and provided to an enrollee while enrolled in that plan, the MAO's final adjudication status of a claim from a provider is not relevant to the MAO's submission of an EDR report to CMS. So go back and look. If you feel that you have information, and I'll give you a for instance. I once worked for a risk-bearing provider group, and what we recognized going through, and I'll do another session on how you reconcile your data just to make sure that you're getting a true accounting of what you think you're submitting and what you're actually getting credit for. But what we found was that we were submitting all these annual wellness exam, and it didn't seem to be getting picked up. And we had our physicians doing them, so they were often part of office visits. The contract with this very, I can't even say it enough, very large health plan payer was that those visits were capitated. And so as a provider group, we were submitting this data and it was getting rejected, not at our clearinghouse, at theirs. They wouldn't process it. And so no one had gotten the memo that the clearinghouse should have accepted those visits and that risk adjustment needed that information. It didn't matter that they were capitated. It didn't matter that it was a $0 claim and no one was going to pay on it. And again, it doesn't matter if that patient went for services and that claim was ultimately denied. That claim or that encounter, and I want to distinguish, claims we usually think of as evidence that has some type of fiduciary or financial processing. The encounter, as it's stated here, is really a snapshot of what occurred during that visit. And it doesn't matter what the financial status or the fiduciary status of that encounter was, you should still submit it because it carries very important information that's needed for your risk adjustment program. And I would make sure that anything that I were submitting, I would look for those individual encounters in my return files to make sure that it was picked up. It's not only going to affect your risk adjustment, it's going to affect your quality performance too, because if the encounter never gets there. Now, I know you have the opportunity to submit supplemental files, but we know that can be a challenge. And then also too, as it relates to risk adjustment, we need to be looking for that primary encounter of that office visit or of that visit with the physician that indicates that there was that face-to-face visit. While you can use the 99499 code to submit supplemental information like we do when we have diagnosis codes beyond 12 on a professional encounter, or we have codes that we found through chart review, but you need to still go back and link to that original encounter. It's not enough just to submit it on that 99499 code in order to make sure that you get full benefit from any diagnoses that you're submitting and that they're being attributed appropriately to the patient, that you have that original encounter. Just some tips as you're going through sweeps. What I would recommend is look and see if your files are matching up with your MAO4 files, if you are working with health plans and Medicare Advantage, if you're an ACO REACH, it's the CCLF files. If you're having trouble interpreting them, know that's something my team and I can do and help you with. But take a look at those files, see if they match what you're expecting to come out of your data warehouse, so your ODW. And if there's a mismatch, if you have more data in your data warehouse than you're seeing reside or end up at the plans, we can take a look and look at all the junctures in which that data passes and see if it's a problem here with not submitting all encounters. Because again, pay status doesn't matter. Any claim or any encounter, sorry, I don't mean to keep interchanging those words, but any encounter or evidence of that visit that then ultimately becomes a claim, and whether that claim is $0 or ends up being denied, doesn't matter, needs to make it to the health plan and then eventually onto CMS to ensure that you've actually accurately captured the burden of illness of your patients and all the work that your physicians have been doing, or the programs that you're spending millions of dollars on to get those HRAs and those annual wellness exams done, have been submitted and accepted. All right, more tips to come. Keep going, stay with it. I know it's a hard time. Happy holidays to those that are celebrating. I hope that you get to take some respite and get a breather, but I know you're going to do amazing, and looking forward to hearing about all the great results that you're getting from these tips. Hopefully they're helpful for you in this time of sweeps. Bye, guys.